Ever try to picture how a city as huge and crazy as New York actually works?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you see the subway, the skyscrapers, the hot dog stands, but like,
Right.
what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming, right?
It is a lot. And most people, they don't even know where to start.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're going to get our hands dirty with something most people wouldn't even glance at.
Okay.
NYC council meeting minutes.
Oh, wow.
Sounds thrilling, I know.
You're really digging deep this time.
Hey, got to keep things interesting.
Right.
Seriously. These minutes, they're like a secret decoder ring to understanding how decisions are made in this city. We're talking about the July 18th meeting, 2024. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it. I've got my magnifying glass ready. What are we looking at first?
All right, so they kick things off with roll call.
Okay.
Sounds boring,
Right.
but it's actually super important.
Oh, it definitely is. You can't have a meeting without knowing who's there.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
But it's more than just attendance. See, they need what's called a quorum to actually get anything done.
A quorum, like a...
42 council members, at least, have to be present to vote and make decisions. Otherwise, it's a no-go.
So every missing council member is a potential wrench in the gears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you look closer, the reasons for absences are listed. Excused, absent, medical, parental leave.
Huh. I never noticed that.
It's easy to overlook, but these little details matter. It shows these are real people with real lives, just like the rest of us.
They're juggling city budgets and, like, doctor's appointments all at the same time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It humanizes the whole process, don't you think?
It does. Okay, after roll call, they had what's called an invocation.
Okay.
This time it was led by a rabbi from, get this, Mill Basin.
Mill Basin, that's specific.
Right. And what's even more interesting is that Councilmember Narcisse asked for the entire invocation to be officially recorded.
Oh, that's unusual. Why would they do that? Usually it's just a quick, oh yeah, we had an invocation.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder if maybe the rabbi's message had some kind of special significance.
Maybe tied to a local issue, or maybe Narcisse wanted those words amplified for some political reason.
That's like a subtle power move, you know?
Yeah.
Using this seemingly routine thing to make a statement.
Exactly. It's those little nuances that can reveal a lot about the dynamics at play.
Okay, moving on. They dive into something called communications. Sounds super vague. Right.
Collapse. Wait, like what does that even mean?
Right. But get this, it's basically a deluge of paperwork.
Think of it as the city's internal memo system. You've got the mayor's office, borough presidents, committees. They all use these communications to get on the same page.
So it's not just catching up on emails, it's literally the wheels of city government starting to turn.
Exactly. Sharing findings from studies, proposing new laws, requesting action on important stuff. It's all in there.
Okay, so we should be paying attention to these communications then.
Oh, absolutely. They're a gold mine for understanding the nitty-gritty of local politics.
Give us an example. What kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Well, in this meeting, the Bronx Borough President, for example, they submitted their 2023 Community Board Demographics Report.
Demographics report, so that's like who lives where, right?
Yeah, exactly. It breaks down the population by age, race, ethnicity, all of that.
Yeah.
And that tells us a lot about who's representing you at the most local level, the community boards.
Okay, so it's not just numbers, it's like a snapshot of representation in action.
You got it. And that ties directly into whose voices are being heard on everything from zoning changes to like where they put the new playground.
Right. So the demographics of a neighborhood can really shape what gets done and how.
100%. And that leads us perfectly into the next big thing on the agenda, land use. This is where things get really interesting.
Land uses, I mean like parks and stuff?
Parks, buildings, infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's about how the city physically changes and who gets to decide.
Okay, so we're not just talking beautification projects here. This is about power, right?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most powerful tools the council has is something called land use call-ups.
Land use call-ups. Sounds kind of ominous, like they're calling you to the principal's office or something. So it's kind of like the council saying, hold on, we want a closer look at this, right?
Exactly. And they're not just flexing, they have real power to approve, deny, or even demand changes to these projects.
So when they do use this call-up power,
Right.
it's worth paying attention to.
Big time. Like in this meeting, they flagged the Bronx Metro North Station area study for review.
Okay, and what's the deal with that?
This is huge EE. We're talking about potentially transforming a whole chunk of the borough.
Really? Wow.
So for the council to step in, well, it raises eyebrows, you know.
Like, is there something fishy going on, or are they just being thorough?
It could be routine due diligence, or it could be a sign of deeper concerns about the project's impact, or even, whispers of conflicts of interest.
Juicy.
A little bit, right?
Yeah. So this tiny little line item in the minutes just opened up a whole can of worms about development and politics and who's really calling the shots.
It's like a tiny crack in the surface, hinting at a much bigger story unfolding underneath.
I like it. Okay, so from massive development projects, we now zoom in on something much smaller. A sidewalk cafe.
Oh,
785 Fairview Avenue in Queens, to be exact.
this is really covering all the bases, huh?
Right. You wouldn't think a sidewalk cafe would need council approval.
You'd be surprised.
But it does. Why is that?
Well, it all comes down to zoning regulations, permits, the whole 9 yards. Sidewalk cafes, as charming as they are, they actually take up public space, and that means the council has to sign off on it.
So it's not just about whether you can sip your latte outdoors. It's about who gets to control those little slivers of public space.
Exactly. And in this case, it was Councilmember Holden who specifically put this cafe application on the agenda.
Interesting. Do we know why?
We can only speculate based on their track record. Maybe they're a huge proponent of alfresco dining, or maybe they were getting complaints from residents about noise or blocked sidewalks.
So it can be as simple as like a quality of life issue for the folks living nearby.
Exactly. And it shows how these minutes can be a jumping off point for further investigation. If you're really curious about a particular council member, you can track their activity on these hyperlocal issues and start to piece together their priorities.
It's like a trail of breadcrumbs. Okay, from sidewalk cafes, we now plunge headfirst into a whirlwind of council business.
Hold on tight.
We've got rapid STI testing, student dress codes, even designating a special day for a musician. It's all on the table.
And that's what I love about local government. 1 minute it's public health, the next it's education, then it's arts and culture. It's a microcosm of the city itself.
It's like they're juggling a million different things at once.
They are, literally.
And speaking of juggling, that dress code debate, that one caught my eye. Resolution 0292-2024, I think it was.
Right. The one about making school dress codes more inclusive, taking into account things like cultural differences and gender expression.
Exactly. And that one wasn't exactly a slam dunk, was it?
Not at all. Council members Ariola, Holden, Marmorato, and Palladino all voted against it, while Yeager abstained.
So even in a city as progressive as New York,
Right.
you still have these underlying tensions and differing opinions playing out.
Absolutely. And those dissenting votes, they're incredibly valuable. They can reveal a lot about the fault lines within the council, the values and priorities driving different factions.
It's like on the surface, it's just a dress code, but underneath, it's about so much more than that.
Exactly. It's about social change, individual expression, parental rights, religious freedom.
Yeah.
It touches on all these hot-button issues.
Wow. So much drama packed into these seemingly mundane procedural documents. Okay, and then from dress codes, they move on to landmarks.
Only in New York.
I know, right? Apparently, designating part of the old Croton Aqueduct as a landmark was also on their to-do list.
And that's important, too. It's easy to dismiss these landmark designations as purely symbolic, but they actually have real impact.
How so?
Well, for one thing, landmark status comes with certain protections. It means any future development or alterations to the site have to go through a much more rigorous review process.
So it's about preserving the city's history.
Exactly.
Making sure that these pieces of the past aren't just erased by new development.
They're recognizing that these places have stories to tell, and that those stories are worth preserving for future generations. It's about recognizing the value of history and its connection to the present.
It's like they're playing the long game, thinking about the legacy they're leaving behind, not just the immediate needs of the city.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of all of this.
Committees.
Committees. Yeah, we've seen a bunch of items get shuffled off to various committees throughout this meeting.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, does anything actually get decided during these meetings?
Oh, it does. But it's a process.
Yeah.
And committees, They're a crucial part of that process.
Okay, so less about the grandstanding and more about the actual nitty-gritty work.
Exactly. These committees, they're like the engine rooms of government, where the real work of crafting and refining legislation gets done.
It's like a whole other layer of government that most people don't even know exists.
Right, but it's so important.
Right.
Because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay, so walk us through it. What actually happens in these committees?
So let's say there's a proposal for a new park. The council assigns it to the committee that deals with parks and recreation.
Makes sense.
Right. But it's not just a bunch of council members sitting around a table saying, yeah, park sounds nice.
Right.
They're going to bring in experts,
Okay.
like city planners, maybe landscape architects, people who actually know how to build a park.
Right.
They'll also invite community members to share their input.
Oh, that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got residents, advocates, maybe even some folks who aren't so thrilled about a new park in their backyard.
Interesting. So it can get kind of heated.
Oh, definitely. There could be disagreements about the park's design, its size, its purpose.
Right, right.
Maybe some people want a dog run, while others want a community garden.
It's like a microcosm of the city itself.
Exactly. And the committee's job is to hear all sides, weigh the pros and cons, and try to come up with a plan that works for everyone.
Or at least a plan that most people can live with.
Right, exactly. It's about finding compromise, building consensus, and making sure everyone feels heard.
So it's not just about what gets built or decided, it's about how that decision is made.
100%.
Yeah.
And that process, as messy and complicated as it can be, is the foundation of a healthy democracy.
I like that. It's about giving people a voice, even in the smallest things.
And that's what these council meeting minutes really highlight for me. They show us that local government isn't some abstract, far-off entity. It's made up of real people.
Right.
Grappling with real issues
Right.
that have a direct impact on our lives.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping our city.
Exactly. It's not just about voting every few years. It's about staying informed, engaging with our elected officials, and making our voices heard on the issues that matter to us.
So we've journeyed deep into the world of NYC council meeting minutes. From roll call to committees and everything in between.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. But as we wrap up, I'm curious, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think for me, it's the reminder that even in a city as big and complex as New York, our individual voices still matter.
They do.
And that by understanding how local government works,
Right.
we can all be more effective advocates for the changes we want to see.
It's about empowering ourselves to be active participants in our democracy, not just passive observers.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the next time you see a news story about a council meeting or a new development project or even just a sidewalk cafe application,
Right.
take a moment to dig a little deeper. Read the meeting minutes, contact your council member, get involved. You might be surprised by what you discover and the impact you can have.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Yeah.
The meeting we just dissected, this was just one day in the life of the NYC Council. Imagine the sheer volume of issues they deal with day in and day out. It's a testament to their hard work and dedication.
It really is.
And a reminder that even small actions taken collectively can have a big impact on shaping the future of our city.